So thank you for joining us. We're very excited to get started. And thank you both, Alana and David, for taking the time. I know it's a very busy time of year and tail end of Hanukkah. So I know there's a whole lot going on. But thank you so much for taking this time to be with us and to share your insights and instincts with the faculty. I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Karen. It's very interesting that we're here today at the end of Hanukkah, which will be one of the holidays we're going to speak about. And if you have questions about it, we certainly would want to address those. What is interesting about us being here, I thought, is this is with this series. I remember back in September, it was scheduled on a Tuesday. And that Tuesday happened to be one of the high holidays, and we'll make a distinction a little later in our presentation between holidays and festivals, and major holidays, minor holidays, and how many holidays there are. There are quite a few, quite a few. But what was unique about it was that Karen made the announcement that we would not have the presentation on Tuesday, and she moved it to Friday. Now you may think, well, that's nice, but that's very unusual. And we'll speak about that, you know, as Jewish people, and particularly Jewish faculty, we run into a number of obstacles yearly from day one that we set foot on campus or in many organizations because of how we observe and what we observe. So we're going to tell you a little bit about that. I'd like to give you some context for trying to understand even the idea of being Jewish. That's controversial and it's very diverse. So you might think there are a lot of Jewish people from what you might hear in the news or see in the media or stereotypical images. But here's some statistics. We represent, and we meaning the Jewish people, and there'll be a little bit of an issue about who we define as Jewish. We only represent 1.9% of the US population. That's a very small number. I mean, when you think about it. In Ohio, we represent 1.3% of the state population, so a little less than the entire U.S. In terms of numbers, you can see it's 151.6 thousand people who declare themselves to be Jewish. We also then tried to find out, well, how many faculty are Jewish on campus, and we could not find a statistic for that. And maybe we didn't search the right places, maybe we didn't go deep enough, but we couldn't find that. I would imagine that we would represent on campus slightly more than 1.3%. We'll take the average and increase it a little bit. But students on campus, Jewish students, there are approximately 3,000 out of the 60 some odd thousand students on campus, including graduates and undergraduates, and they represent about 6% of all the students, mostly on the Columbus campus. So when we talk about minorities and religious minorities and cultural minorities, we certainly fit into that category. So we are, in a way, what I like to call visibly invisible. You can look at us, but you can't always tell who is or who is not Jewish. And that becomes another question, particularly as we get into the holidays and the festivals, because how we define who we are as Jewish people also defines the way we look at holidays. So the question is, how do we define who is Jewish? Let's go to take a look at that slide. So here's a spectrum of the Jewish religion, and we're made up of a number of, you might think of this as a continuum from very observant to completely non-observant. And that breaks down to what we call Orthodox, and there are various spectrums within Orthodoxy, Reform, and Conservative, the three major ways that we observe different things. But it also creates problems when we give you these statistics, because how do we define who is Jewish? Well, from the observant point of view, the Orthodox point of view, and from in our general culture, you have to be born to a Jewish mother, and you also have to be observant. Okay, so from the extreme Orthodox, I was brought up My family was Orthodox. I was brought up conservatism, which is kind of in between, and I've migrated over to Reform, which is more liberal. And when I talk about liberal and conservative and orthodoxy, it's in how we interpret, okay, the customs and the ceremonies and the commandments. So you should know.
David, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, please. Make sure everyone has your microphone on mute. I'm picking up a lot of like a clicking. I don't know if anybody else is getting that or not, but or maybe David, is your clicker next to your speaker?
No, there's no clicking on my end.
Okay.
So I hear quiet.
Thank you.
Where was I? Oh yeah. So there are variations and diversity within this idea of being observant too. So you have to be born to a Jewish mother, but then I put not always, because in the Reform tradition, you can, as long as one of your parents is Jewish, they would consider you to be Jewish. So you have to be born into it. That's one way. You can convert from another religion, but it has to be recognized as valid. So from the Orthodoxy point of view, unless you have a Orthodox conversion, you would not be considered Jewish. From the Reform point of view, you can convert. It's mostly an educational process, a few other things, but the Orthodox wouldn't recognize that as being Jewish. And this gets caught up into the law of return. So who cannot become a citizen, an Israeli citizen. So we exist from the Orthodox point of view in the diaspora, and we've been doing that for a few thousand years. Okay, so that's three ways. But also, to be Jewish, one simply says they are culturally and sociologically, and they do not have to observe any religious traditions at all. So when you count, depends who's asking. If you're Orthodox, you would count one way. If you're Reform, you would count another way. And depending on how you think of yourself, you would identify or not identify as Jewish. So you can observe not a single tradition at all, but you were born Jewish, you lived culturally within a Jewish community, or at least consider yourself to be Jewish, and it becomes a religion, an identity, and for us, a peoplehood. So we exist as a peoplehood with all these variations in the way that we observe, the way that we worship, the way that we think of ourselves, and the way that we connect, with others. So when we talk about diversity, there's plenty. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And I think Alana's going to talk a little bit about exploring the holidays.
Thanks so much for sharing that, David. As David was mentioning before, lots of nuances in how we identify as being Jewish. In my own family, I was raised in the conservative movement. My husband was raised in the Reform movement. His mother is Catholic. So that was presented lots of challenges when trying to get married in the conservative movement, given that they did not consider him to be Jewish, even though he practiced as a Jew. So again, very, very complicated, as David touched upon. But I'm going to transition a little bit to talking about some of the holidays, which probably some of you have heard of these holidays. Some of these holidays are smaller holidays, so maybe you haven't heard, but I'd like to just give you some context for them. So there are many major holidays and festivals in Judaism. These are just some of the highlighted ones. And again, I'm not going to go into great detail for all of them because we'd be here a really long time. So I'll talk about the ones that typically come up that you hear about possibly from your students or faculty that are larger. Also, I wanted to point out that in Judaism, we go by a different year. So the year is 5782. So that's just an interesting fact. So how you pronounce some of these holidays before I talk about them, you may have heard of Rosh Hashanah. We have Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, Hanukkah, which we just finished a couple nights ago, Tu B'Shvat, Purim, Pesach, Lag BaOmer, Shavuot, and Tisha B'Av. So that's how you say some of these holiday names, and I'm going to highlight again a few of them. I want to this is kind of a joking matter. Essentially, a lot of Jewish people say this, saying when people ask about our holidays, what do they represent? We say most holidays are they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat. So that's kind of just our sad but joking saying that we like to say. Food is very, very meaningful in the Jewish culture. And I'll touch base and David will talk about kind of how food is interwoven and customs of food into our holidays and also just a lot of Jewish practice. So we just finished Hanukkah, which is known as the Festival of Lights. It's observed for 8 days. And this holiday commemorates the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. It took place in 168 BC, and at this point in time, Judaism was completely outlawed. And so the temple where Jews practiced was desecrated and destroyed. And in this holiday, it said that the Jews rose up in a rebellion against their Syrian oppressors, and this was called the Maccabean Revolt. And they were a very small people, small group, really not very strong, not warriors of any kind, but they managed to take back the temple. And there was this story of this Hanukkah miracle that they wanted to light this Hanukkah, the lights in the temple to kind of make it holy, but they only had oil for 1 day. And miraculously, the oil lasted for 8 days, so in time for them to get more oil. So that's why our holiday is celebrated for 8 days. Just a few items that I'll point out just in case you see them in pictures. First off, we do lots of foods with oil on this holiday because of the miracle of oil. So these are becoming really popular too. We call them latkes. You've probably heard of them as potato pancakes. I made some this year. They were mostly edible. Again, lots and lots of oil. We also have traditional games that we play for Hanukkah. These are called dreidels. They have different images or different letters that represent how you play the game. So this is a gimel. You really want to get this one. When you spin it, you win all of the coins. And this is a hay, and they have, again, different meanings. And we play this a lot with children during Hanukkah. We also have a traditional food called a sufganiyah, which is a jelly-filled donut, also fried in oil. So again, seeing some traditions with Hanukkah. And I wanted to kind of switch it over to have David explain, and he can talk to this a little bit more, but Hanukkah has become a lot more commercialized, I think because it kind of lines up a lot of times with Christmas. So I'll have David talk a little bit about this and the kind of changes that we've been noticing. For example, when I go to a store, growing up, I would never see anything relating to Hanukkah in a store ever. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing some more decor and things that I can, potentially use, but I'll hand it over to David to kind of talk about that change.
Okay, thanks, Alana. One thing I want to point out is the letters have significance. So when you put the letters together, there are 4, it means a great miracle happened there. However, if you're in Israel, those letters mean a great miracle happened here. So that's how we kind of deal with the diaspora. But this is an interesting holiday because from what you would see in the modern world today, right now, seems like this is a major holiday, very important. In Jewish tradition, it really isn't. It's a very minor festival. It doesn't even rise to the level of a holiday or a holy day. And on most holy days, there are fasts, and we would go to the synagogue or temple to worship in the beginning and end. You'll see that when Alana talks about festival. But this is a minor festival, but it's become, in many ways, it's become conflated with the idea of Christmas, and it has nothing to do with Christmas at all or the holiday season. This is a very difficult time for children, Jewish children specifically, because they don't see much of their symbols or their holiday out in the public sphere. So no, we don't have Christmas trees. We don't really think much about Santa Claus. We do give presents to each other, one each night, or as many as you want each night. But in the culture here and in Western Europe, this is the time of year when we feel, and I'm speaking for me, but for my friends and family, we feel, how should I put this, different, separated from, not part of the culture. So in the Chabad, which is a more how do I put that, more orthodox but a very publicly oriented way to make, quote, Judaism fun, they've been pushing for more public displays. So generally, we would put the menorah in our windows, because it is the festival of light, and that's what we're celebrating. This idea of religious freedom, that's what this was about, and the power of light over darkness. Again, this is one of the holidays where Jews were outlawed, and those who practiced Judaism were killed. And that's a theme that as Alana mentioned, goes through all these holidays. And then we eat the latkes. But anyway, so it doesn't have the same significance as the holy days. It's not really a holiday for public displays, although it's become that. And it becomes a very difficult time of year when everybody, you see all the Christmas movies, you see families getting together, you see all the parties, and of course, everyone thinks that you celebrate Christmas. So it becomes a very awkward time for us, for some of us. So the idea of what we see today is more of a recognition. Yes, it's nice to recognize it, and that would be enough for me. But you see big candle lightings, and part of that is this is a community celebration more than it of course involves families, but it also involves the whole community, because this was a community effort to rededicate the temple and to be able to exist as a people almost 2,000 some odd years ago now. Okay.
Thanks for adding that, David. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit. David mentioned the holy days, or the high holy days that we celebrate, which have a lot of significance, are really important and taken generally very seriously in Judaism. So the two of these holidays are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these, and then David and I will kind of touch base on what are some challenges with trying to practice these holidays while on campus. So Rosh Hashanah is generally, it starts, the Jewish New Year starts in our fall. So it's different than the American New Year. This is the most holy time of the year. And Rosh Hashanah actually means the head of the year. And there is a very important period between Rosh Hashanah and the next holiday, which is Yom Kippur. It's 10 days in between the two, and those are called the 10 days of awe. And so the significance of this first holiday, this head of the new year, is really our time to contemplate any violations, any acts that have not been kind, gossiping, anything of that nature that we have made to God or to friends, family, strangers, anything that we can think about and reflect upon over the past year that we may have done that we're not proud of. This holiday is a really important time of reflection and introspection. And during this time of awe, these 10 days, it is really our task to reflect on these acts and to really make amends. And so in Judaism, it's not only important to ask forgiveness essentially from God, but we really believe in directly asking for forgiveness from the people we wronged. So that's really important, because we obviously know, it's hard to ask, forgiveness from God, but it's really hard to turn to the person that you wronged right in front of you as well and ask for their forgiveness. So that is kind of that period when we're, again, reflecting, thinking about how we can be a better person. There is a belief that God opens up essentially during this time the book of life and death for the upcoming year. And so again, repenting and thinking about how we can make amends will hopefully allow us to be written in the book of life for the upcoming year. And David, if you have anything you wanted to add in terms of pieces that I'm leaving out for Rosh Hashanah, by all means. So,
No, you've done this very well.
Okay.
Alana, do you want to take a moment to explain some of the significance of the food?
I do. Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we have apples and honey. In Hebrew, we call it tapuchim udvash. And so that's really signifying like the sweetness of the year to come. So Rosh Hashanah is a little bit of a lighter holiday. We'll talk about Yom Kippur, which is very serious. Again, we are celebrating the beginning of the year while also starting to reflect on what we can do better. But again, there's a lot of celebration too with Rosh Hashanah. So we do a lot of sweet things. We have a pomegranate seed. It's said that there are 613 seeds in the pomegranate. I have never counted them, but they say that equates to the 613, we call it mitzvot, or acts of kindness that we are encouraged to do at all times. Judaism is really, when people talk about Judaism, we strongly believe in social justice, helping the community, mitzvot. They say, like, if you try to sum up Judaism, a famous philosopher said, do unto others as you would have done unto them, and the rest is commentary. Like, we really think it's very important to act and be good people and help the community. So again, those ideas of mitzvot or good deeds is really important. This here is called a shofar. It's from a ram. I think it's a ram's horn. This is used in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We blow this throughout services in temple. And again, I didn't mention this before, but in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, David mentioned for Hanukkah, we don't typically go to temple for this festival. These two holidays are most people will go to temple. It's very, very common for all of the spectrum, Reform, Conservative, Orthodoxy, to go to temple on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And so this is, David, you might know more the significance of the shofar. I think it's supposed to make us like aware and be like an alarm to kind of help us stay present, but I could be wrong on the shofar meaning.
You're close. Yeah, it's to wake you up, to inspire, and also the sound to create a little fear for that's why we call it the days of awe. To bring about that reflection and remembrance. So we hear. We want to hear the voices.
Also, you'll see, if you ever were to go into a temple in Rosh Hashanah, you would see that the spiritual leaders, the rabbi, the rabbitzin, the cantor, a lot of the people that are leading the services, they wear all white. And they're trying to be like, remember holiness and try to be closer to God, and this idea of being pure and trying again to like right any wrongs that we've done. Okay, so that's a little bit about Rosh Hashanah. Again, this takes place early fall, and David and I will talk about why this is such a challenge when working on campus and being a student on campus in a moment. So I'll talk about Yom Kippur. This is the holiest day of the year for Judaism. It's a very serious, somber holiday where most Jews will fast, typically at least 24 to 26 hours. No drinking, nothing in your stomach. And that's really to help us focus and think about the sins that we have possibly done or the wrongs that we've done that year. And also just kind of empty us so that we restart after this holiday kind of anew. And this is a way of expressing our repentance and asking for forgiveness as well. We're hoping in this holiday that God is going to accept our contrition and accept us into the book of life for the upcoming year. So we have, something else to point out. Jewish holidays start in the evening. So that's a little bit different than some other holidays. So in the evening before Yom Kippur, you typically have a last meal together. before you go to services. You go to a night service, and then you're fasting from that night service all the way until the next night service. And then there's a big meal that takes place after, at the end of Yom Kippur. This is often a time for families or the community to gather, and it's called break fast, which is exactly as it sounds. We are breaking the fast together. And I'm always very relieved at break fast that I made it through the fasting period, because it is a real challenge for me. I always dread Yom Kippur coming up. I don't know, David's probably much stronger than I am. So we're going to touch a little bit upon why are these a little bit challenging when we're on campus. So I was previously an Ohio State student, so I can talk about from the perspective of being a student. And David, I'm going to have him start off by talking about why this might be challenging from the perspective of faculty as well.
Thank you. Yeah. When I first came to Ohio State, or in fact, when I worked at some other organizations, the high holidays particularly always presented challenges. Given my background, I felt a very strong need to take the day, and if you're conservative or a little more orthodox or more traditional, you would take 2 days off to go to synagogue or temple. Same thing, different way we express the words. It's another one because the temple is gone, the original temple. So if you're more conservative, you use the term synagogue. But anyway, so it was a challenge because that was a work day. And if you're new, you didn't have personal time off, you didn't have holiday time or vacation time built up. And even when I came to OSU, and probably even today, you just can't cancel class. So what do? If you're a new faculty member, maybe first year, second year, or you're untenured, it's hard to ask for that time. There is anti-Semitism in the world, and it's on campus, it's in our communities everywhere. And sometimes we become conditioned to not disclose, like I said, we're visibly invisible, our backgrounds. So it becomes a challenge of, well, how do I observe something that's very important to me, at the same time meet my obligations? Some have, and I'm speaking only for me, others have worked it out, but it always becomes a problem. And I always look at the calendar and make sure, or hope, that I don't have a class on the day the holidays are going to fall. So that becomes a real struggle, as to what to do. I can recall compromises I made on Yom Kippur, which hurt, which is I'd go to class, but I won't eat. Or I'd go to my office and I wouldn't eat. But, and that's what I did. It was never very satisfying either way, but I didn't quite know how to deal with it. Who would I go to and try to explain all this, particularly when there were very few Jewish people in the organizations that I worked at. So that becomes a challenge for me. Certainly online has helped that. And what I do now, so I don't ask students, of course, to religion, but I build in, regardless, for all, extra time during that week to complete whatever assignments. So if we're on a week schedule, it would be now 9 days you have to complete if you need it, just to do that. But yeah, even today, it's still, I don't care as much today. I'll just take off. But our college is very understanding. But when you're new and you're an assistant professor or an instructor or a lecturer, it's very difficult when you don't have the power and you don't want to disclose. And sometimes if you do, you're told, well, you have to find a substitute, but you won't get paid, or these other kinds of ways that you're penalized. And it still goes on. It still goes on. So from a faculty perspective, that's always been very difficult.
Thanks for sharing that, David. And from a student perspective, as David said, I really did not usually feel comfortable disclosing my religion. And again, maybe we're conditioned based on, experiences of anti-Semitism to just kind of stay invisible at some points. But again, these holidays are first thing in sometimes the first week, second week of the semester. They go by the Jewish calendar. So that's another complicated piece. Christmas has a set date, but Jewish holidays go by a totally different calendar. So they're never consistently on a day, which also makes it really hard, sometimes for faculty to remember when the holidays are, unless you're specifically looking them up. But again, it would often be the first week, second week, third week of class. I was a type A student. I never wanted to miss class. It was never something I would ask to do. I was always present. And so here it was the decision of, do I tell my professor that I'm Jewish? Do I disclose this right away before they even know me, the first few weeks of school? Do I ask to miss class? And it was always just very, very anxiety provoking. And I still, as soon as the holiday ends, I Google search the next year when the holiday is going to be and look at my calendar and start getting a lump in my throat and thinking about, all of the meetings that I'll have to either miss or try to figure out how to make them. So that's something that still goes on today. So it can be a real challenge. I know as a student for Yom Kippur, I really, I would go to services and then I would be on my, 18th hour of fasting for my 5 to 7 p.m. class, trying to walk to class, really, really shaky and sitting there trying to focus. Also just feeling like I compromised and really wanted to be, reflecting in the services that were going on, but knowing that it was just really hard to miss class. So I had some really understanding professors when I did disclose, and sometimes I had less understanding professors. So I've seen a wide range. And sometimes I had someone I would learn was a Jewish professor who actually maybe was less understanding because they didn't observe it. So I can't say across the board who was more or less understanding, but just something to just be aware of with some of your students, especially early on in fall semester is when these two holidays occur. Something to think about. We're going to talk about just one more holiday, and then we grouped these this way because there's some dietary components that accompany this holiday. And then we'll touch on kashrut, which is a certain way of eating, just to also bring some awareness to some of these aspects. So you may hear of this holiday. This holiday, a lot of people equate with Easter because it, again, happens around the same time. Different meanings, different reasons for the holidays, but it's called Passover, or in Hebrew we call it Pesach. And this holiday is celebrating the exodus of Israelites from slavery in Egypt. So it's a big holiday that celebrates freedom. Again, you see these themes of freedom or, challenges perhaps that Jews have faced in these holidays. This occurs in the spring, again, around the time of Easter. It's by the Hebrew calendar, so it adjusts based on the dates that we follow. This picture here that you see, this is a picture of what we call a Seder. Seder in Hebrew means order. And we have these books here called Haggadot, which means to tell. And what we do, there's typically in the diaspora, when you're not in Israel, we typically celebrate 2 nights of Seder. In Israel, you celebrate 1. And we join together with the family or our community to retell the story of the Exodus from Egypt, or how we were freed from slavery. I'll talk a little bit about some of the foods. So during Passover, we actually have a pretty strong dietary component if you practice it. So this right here is in the middle is called matzah. It's unleavened bread. It's bread that's not risen. And the reason that we do this is the story goes that the Jews had very little time when they were escaping Egypt. They couldn't wait for their bread to rise. And so we do not, during these 8 days of Passover, we do not eat any bread or leavened food, which makes it a little bit challenging sometimes when there's, perhaps a party or a staff meeting during Passover. So something just to be aware of. it would be amazing if someone knew it was Passover, or maybe there was a box of matzah. I would be blown away. It would be really lovely. Obviously not expected, but just something that would be wonderful to think about during these days. Because again, we can't eat anything with bread, and it gets even more complicated the more traditional you are, because we don't do things that rise. So things with corn syrup, and I won't go into all the details, but it can be really, really challenging to find things to eat during Passover. I want to touch upon a few other things with symbolism, and then I'll turn it over to David if he wants to add some more pieces for Passover. So what you can see people wearing, a lot of the men will wear this. Females now also can and choose to wear them. Those are called kippot. Those go on the head during religious times. If you're Orthodox, they wear them at all times, but if you're not Orthodox, you might not wear a kippah. So you can kind of be invisible without one. Here is called a Seder plate, and all the foods on the Seder plate represent different pieces of this spring. So we have right here, this is salt water to remember the tears of the Jews as they were slaves. We have, let's see, I'm trying to remember all my symbolism. This is a sprig of parsley, often to remember spring or renewal. This is charoset, which is a lot of times an apple and nut and cinnamon dish. Is really delicious. And this is kind of symbolic of the mortar, because we were building the pyramids and working really hard at the time when we were slaves. So we remember that. We have a bitter herb, which is to remind us of the bitterness of being slaves in Egypt. And I think the egg is supposed to be symbolic of life, but David, you might know that better than me.
That's a mystery. The egg
is the mystery.
No, it's there. Yeah, I would say it. Yeah, I think life is, life, birth, and this holiday, which is very family oriented, as Alana pointed out. What I like about it is what we do here, unlike some of the other holidays where we remember these holidays. This one we try, and you can tell from the food, and what we're doing is we're recreating that Exodus, that we are actually going through it. So while these are symbolic, we dip in the salt water because that's the tears that we shed for all people who were enslaved and anywhere and are not free. So this is one in which really, to some extent, from the Exodus, all other holidays down the road, would evolve from. This was almost like the beginning of our sense of a peoplehood. So this becomes a very important family holiday for us.
Mm-hmm. And as David said, there's every Seder is slightly different, but at a lot of my family Seders, we bring up issues of current social justice, and we relate that to slavery today. And we talk about countries that essentially have slavery today. And there's a lot of discussion and debate. Again, it depends. Sometimes we have Seders with little kids, and so you see lots of skits and things like that that are more fun for children. But again, you see a lot of discussion and trying to apply this element of freedom to the world today.
Well, one of the aspects of this holiday in particular demonstrates is how we evolve with modernity, particularly in more in the reform movement. And you look at some of the comments that Miriam puts up. The egg is burnt, in her comment a little bit. It does represent, as we said, the circle of life. The egg in Israel, though, is burnt with mourning, M-O-U-R-N, of ritual foods. So everything is symbolic. But in this holiday, what we're seeing more and more is we're adapting the traditional Haggadah to deal with current issues. And at least from the reform movement, I create my own. So we may have one on ecology. We'll bring in parts of the story, of course, but we'll theme it around the environment or human slavery, or as Alana said, social justice. And this holiday really represents social justice. At the end of the holiday, we open the door to let the prophet Elijah in. But Elijah represents all who are hungry to come and eat. In fact, it's a custom that we do that we invite other people who may be less fortunate, to experience this recreation of from slavery to freedom, from slavery to redemption, and so forth. And this holiday also represents, it goes through our tradition, our tension between modernity and tradition. So we see new things evolve. We have Miriam's cup that we had now. Unfortunately, I forget why we did that. Hilda, why do we have Miriam's cup? My wife knows all this. What? Because of the women, yeah. So women in Judaism are named, but they're never really given the prominence. So my spouse knows the part.
Okay. Are you back?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. My internet's a little unstable.
The orange.
Oh, the orange. Oh, yes. Besides Miriam's cup, which goes with the cup of Elijah, we also have an orange on the Seder plate. So she's going to tell you just a brief story about it. It's kind of an interesting idea, but it shows how we adapt and evolve these holidays to fit important social issues. Go ahead.
So
This is Hilda. You can't see her. Oh, there she is.
here I am. So the story goes that the daughter of a very famous rabbi was invited to a Seder at a university in Ohio, and went, and there was a big discussion of social justice issues. And there were some people who were very upset that there were women who were now rabbis and women who were as involved in Judaism as they were. And she made a comment that women are as important to Judaism as anybody else. In fact, the idea of adding to the Seder plate is very important, and we can add an orange to represent the women. There was also another Seder at that time where somebody was trying to represent diversity and put bread on the Seder plate, and not realizing that the act of putting bread on the Seder plate ended Passover. So we've been through a lot of that with trying to figure it out. And now we try to remember to put an orange on the Seder plate. And the kids always ask about it, and it allows us to tell the story. But the idea of being inclusive has become very important in Judaism.
Interesting story. So we add that to our plate. Yeah, Miriam, of course, was Moses' sister. Miriam has a good commentary going on. So you see this evolves, at least in the Reform tradition, as new issues pop up, and we try to make Judaism more relevant to the modern world in which we live, and that creates a tension that you saw going all the way back to Hanukkah, because the aim was to assimilate Jewish people into Greek culture, and you always had that tension going on for thousands of years. Interesting story. Okay, let's move on to kashrut.
Okay, so you may have heard the term kosher, keeping kosher, or saying that's not kosher. Which has actually been kind of adapted into just common speech. And this is very complicated. Some Jews keep kosher, not all. And I'm not going to go into all of the specific rules because, again, they're very complicated. But generally, some of the bigger rules that you might see with kosher is not eating any pig products is a very important one. And then shellfish. If you keep kosher, you don't eat shellfish. And then another big one, which is surprising to some people, is that we do not combine dairy with meat in any meals. So it gets very complicated. So my husband's just in shock that I've never had a cheeseburger. It blows his mind. But if you keep kosher, a lot of times you're not combining the dairy and the meat together. You could read about kosher if you want, if you're curious about some of the laws. But I just wanted to bring this up when we talk about a Passover and kosher, and in terms of some of the challenges that might arise with trying to, keep dietary observance, specifically on campus. So I'll hand it over to David to kind of touch a little bit about how that might be a challenge, or why that might be a challenge.
Yeah, this is always a challenge, and again, on the reform side, the more liberal side, you pick and choose what you want to do, how observant you want to be or not. As you move more to the right, it becomes more follow the text. But it does become a problem. I mean, some examples, as Alana pointed out, particularly around Passover, when a lot of foods are unavailable, or we don't eat because we're trying to recreate that exodus. And remember, there's nothing for us to eat if we go to a faculty meeting, or if we go, unless we bring our own foods with us. It's just a lack of recognition. But even more importantly, I remember recently, I've been to a number of discussions at the faculty club when they have the football brunches. And it's good for all people that they should recognize that not everybody eats pork. And when you look at the menus, even in many restaurants, and even on our campus, you could go and not be able to eat anything. Now, they've been accommodating, but you have to bring it up. Yeah, she says, can't have bread and butter, I hope it's okay. Yeah, well, you can have bread and butter except on Passover. But anyway, so it becomes a challenge of, what am I going to do? So you either carry your own food with you, or you go hungry. So, I mean, even the Army has adapted, and when you're in the field, and you're bringing MREs or meals ready to eat, your unit can order kosher meals for those. So it's just a lack of awareness that not everybody shares in a unitary in a uniform culture when it comes to eating. And
I just want to make you aware that we have about 10 minutes left, so I would like to have 5 for the audience, because I know there's going to be questions. This has just been so enlightening. So if we could move through, okay, just so that we have that 5 minutes at the tail end, because I do have to end exactly at 1.
We're just about done. Well, we want to bring up one more point to show you how our traditions evolve. And this is not a holiday in the sense that we would think of it, or a festival day, but because of events being what they are, we have new days. So Yom HaShoah is to remember the Holocaust, and this is a big community celebration I guess in the springtime, I think it was, in Columbus and other communities too. So we evolved new ways of expressing our Judaism and our identity. And of course, that identity exists along this very, very long continuum. So we just wanted to bring this up to show how we adapt to changes in our history and in our culture. Okay, Alana, yeah. So now we're at questions.
Great, this is fabulous. So before we open up to the audience, I just want to thank you, applause to you for taking a risk and sharing such an important, and giving us such an important awareness, not only as we try to be good citizens to our colleagues, but also as we serve our students. Just being aware is so very helpful. Sometimes I think we go through our days, and our year just kind of going from one thing to the next, not even realizing, Alana, that we're offending, by not having something as easy as matzah, to serve. Just the awareness is so very helpful, especially for those of us who are in, as you mentioned, you go to faculty meetings, you go to faculty club, in those situations that tend to be combining social with professional. just knowing, and being a little bit aware is very, very helpful. So thank you so much. I do want to open up for audience questions, if there are any. I do have one too that I want to, if I can get to. If not, I'll come back a little later. Does the audience have anything? And thank you, Miriam, for your additional commentary. You were part of the presentation too. So thank you for that. Any questions for David and Alana or Miriam? Well, I'll start then. I do have one question. You spoke so well about being a faculty member and how, the challenges around the year, because the calendar is different. And so even in the awareness of it, you might not be on the right days, thinking about how to honor your faculty who may be Jewish. But then when you spoke as a student, Alana, I was very impressed. First of all, is it common, and I'll just say from the perspective of an African-American female, it is common for Black students to seek out Black faculty, just even for the camaraderie, just to share sometimes, just to talk, maybe not even to serve as an advisee, but just to kind of talk. Is that common also in the Jewish faith? Do you have students a place? I know, David, I want you to also speak to the organization that you're a part of, you talked to me about. But Alana, do students have a place where they can seek out not Black faculty, but Jewish faculty to support them?
To my knowledge, there was not a way to seek out faculty. There were two really big organizations on campus for just general support. That was the Hillel, which you may have heard of, and the Chabad there. Even though Chabad is typically an Orthodox organization, they were very welcoming to many, many students. So for me as a student, I actually came from a small Jewish school. So I was in a little bit of shock when I went to Ohio State, where I was on a floor as the only Jewish person, and people, again, very friendly. This isn't, it was fine, but it was hard when certain holidays came up or challenges like this. So I would go to the Hillel or the Chabad for some of that support. To my knowledge, I never knew of like a faculty support group. And again, like we were saying before, people don't always disclose that they're Jewish. So you can sometimes tell based on a person's name that they might be Jewish. There are certain names that we can recognize. I mean, obviously some people know about like Berg, anything Berg or Stein. There's some common ones sometimes, not always the case, but there was no support group really like that with faculty from a student perspective that was available. So that's a really interesting question.
David, you mentioned that you're part of an organization when you and I spoke earlier. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we do have on campus the Milton Center for Jewish Studies, and it's a very robust organization which brings together coursework from Near Eastern Studies, history, and philosophy. It has 2 or 3 of its own courses, but and you don't have to be Jewish to major in Jewish studies, but it is available, and they do a lot of good work both on campus and in the community. There's a full list of courses. I think Miriam's a member of the board. I'm a member of the board. So, but a place where you can seek out Jewish faculty, unless you know who they are, not really. Like I said, it's hard to tell.
Interesting.
And it's not something we go about, like I said, asking, disclosing.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. You mentioned the anti-Semitism. It has also stopped me in a class. I used to have students, as part of an activity, submerge themselves as the only one of something. So many times they would choose to go to the deaf school or to a cultural center, but a lot of times they would choose religious services. So it was not uncommon for students to choose to go to synagogue or to a mosque. And about 3 years ago, after the Pittsburgh incident, and followed on the heels of the Black church bombing, and I had a student that was followed in a mosque, I decided to stop that. It was just too risky and unfortunate, because the insights that students brought back was amazing. And I think that's why I have such a passion for making these awarenesses available to people, because like I said, we just go through life thinking we're in our own lane and we're not even paying attention to the fact that there are other people who think differently than we do, and they need to be honored and respected. So I'll be quiet. Anyone else? Anyone else in the audience have a question for David and Alana before we have to sign off? If not, I just want to say again, thank you, a huge thank you for the time, for the talent, for the information, for the awareness. It just makes us better. It just does. When we know more, we just do better. So thank you so very, very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, another time too, because I could talk about these things all day long, and we could go and go and go again. So look for me to knock on your door again. I was asked to remind everyone on Wednesday that the Edge office is hosting a coffee break, a virtual coffee break at 10:30. I don't have a link, but if you were with us last month when Shannon Gonzalez-Miller spoke, she will also be again speaking at this event. So thank you all for coming. I wish you a wonderful day, great end of the semester. I said, as Alana and I were setting up, I'm really glad to see this semester go. It was challenging on a lot of levels, but the best part about letting something difficult go is that you have the hope of a new horizon. So looking forward to a brand new calendar year and coming back fresh in spring. You guys take care. And thanks again, Alana and David.
Appreciate it.
And Miriam.